Hey everyone, welcome to Wednesday live and unscripted with Jen and Leah of the Righteous Rebels. If you're unfamiliar with what the Righteous Rebels is, head on over to the Facebook group, The Righteous Rebels. Hit the join button, ding, and you'll be entered into the group for all of the fun and magical stuff that's over there. Live and unscripted is our basically our weekly podcast or video cast where we allow inspiration to be the guide. It's what it says it is. We have conversations live and unscripted. We do it with each other, but we also have on amazing special guests, many of which in the past I have only known through maybe a 10-minute phone call. But recently we have been inviting our friends who we met in India to be a part of that and share the amazingness of who they are and the work that they do. And then we also have a list of some new ones coming up that I'm just excited to bring to you. So typically, when we have a guest on, this is a format where I ask one question at the beginning and then we let inspiration take over from there. And any of the questions that come in, I'm always amazed and not amazed because I know I'm going to be amazed at what actually takes place inside of those conversations and the things that I learn about the guest and the wisdom and other yummy nuggets that they have to offer by way of giving you, the listener, something that you can take away and put in your tool belt or in a box just to be like, I'm not sure what to do in this moment. And I have some ideas and some tools, and you start sifting through and you're like, wait, I remember that one, that this person one time said this, and I think I'm going to give it a try. So that's what live and unscripted is at this point. Things are always shifting and shaping and molding. So we'll just see where that goes. We want to welcome you wherever you're watching this from. It could be from our Facebook, the Righteous Rebels group. It could also be on LinkedIn or on YouTube. And we just say thank you. Thank you for sharing your time with us. We know it's valuable, and we just thank you. So we start. Yeah.
I just had it popped into my head about what rebel is, and we were talking about like t-shirt. Yeah, like how would you do like a short definition of that? I'm gonna pop it in the group just to get some other rebels feedback or ideas of what comes to mind when that word comes into your space. And I love our working definition so far. Can I share it? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Here, hold on. I believe Leah was just giving you, the listener, watcher, an invitation to go to the Facebook group and give us your definition of what a rebel is. Did I hear that correctly, Leah?
Yeah. So I'm just going to make a post like maybe how do you define rebel, or how do you describe rebel, or something along that lines. And then you can put a word, you can put a sentence, whatever, however you define rebel, we'd love to know. And maybe it'll help inform our working definition of what we feel rebel is.
You know, and I love that you're bringing that up, because in my coaching with people, that's one of the powerful things that I choose to practice, which is looking at the definitions of words that are given to me, and then deciding whether or not that definition actually works or fits into my lived experience, and when necessary, redefining what that means. And so I appreciate the invitation to extend it to our listeners to like, what does it mean for you? Not what someone else has told you, but what does it mean for you? And I'm excited to see what that is. I'm excited to see what you guys share.
And I love that you talk about that too, because it's how when we talk about word energy, it's like the one that came up today, the difference between what is a rule and what is a boundary. And I'm like, it's just the same difference, right? And it just leads to interesting conversation, because when you break it down, how is it we're using that, and what's our experience with it, but also what are the contexts around it? Like what's the meaning that our culture and our world and our people around us have, how do they use it, and how it's like I think of when I go to describe something that I know in Spanish, but when I translate it to English, it doesn't mean the same as it doesn't have the same feel as it does in Spanish. Like in Spanish, it has so much more meaning and like, is it innuendos?
Innuendo?
Like, yeah, like there's other, there's more backstory is what comes to mind than the actual translation. So
When I
yeah,
hear you say that, I'm like, the word has more texture.
yes, that
Just,
would be fair.
well, and again, this concept of, we got to get to breathing, by the way.
Yes. Sorry, I just
This
jumped
concept
right
of
in.
when we're listening to someone in conversation, and so like today, rules versus boundaries. And I said to you, they're different. And we actually haven't had that full on discussion yet because it happened right before we came on here. But it's that moment for us as the listener to recognize where there may be a disconnect inside of a conversation that could cause emotions to rise, therefore intelligence to go down, but to pause and be like, whoa, I can ask a question here, like, what's your meaning of this word? Or what does that mean to you? Or so that I have a better understanding of the person who I'm talking to and how they're using words or concepts in their world, and whether or not it's the definition that the world gives us, or a family gives us, or maybe it's a religious institution gives us, versus them saying, wow, I've actually redefined that for myself and this is how I use it. It leads to such beautiful conversation and understanding, and this space of, even if you're not agreeing, you can stand on common ground and just create beauty in what you're doing, and building relationships. So there's that.
Okay. Why don't we pause and we'll get into our breathing and then jump into Rebel and all the other things.
Okay, good idea. Good idea. So if you're new to our program, we always start off with less conversation and more breathing. It's something that I learned as a way to, I actually learned it as tail light breathing or tail light meditation. And it's this moment, like when I see tail lights, whether I'm in frustration or not, I can just have this trigger to just breathe, to take a deep breath, to bring myself back into a present moment. So how we use it here is, today let's do we'll just do box breathing. It's easy. Most of you will know what that is. And it's an opportunity to get really present, to let go of what's already happened in the day, and to let go of what you think is going to happen in the day, and just be right here, right now, where we can consciously make decisions, where we can be more present in listening, and then actually more present in a heart space to participate. So box breathing is, for those of you who may not know, is a breathing in through your nose. We say through a 4 or 5 count, whatever works best for you. That's going to get your chest expanded. We're going to invite you to take this one all the way down into your pelvis, breathing really deep, like you're filling a balloon in your belly. Breathing in for 4 or 5 count, holding the inhale for the same count, exhaling through your mouth for the same count, and then holding the exhale for the same count. And then you're just going to repeat. As you do this, I am going to extend an invitation for you to do it with a closed eyes or downward gaze, whichever feels most comfortable for you, just as a way to deepen the amount of presence that you can gain, because you're not paying attention to the other stuff around you. So we'll do the first one together. I should do this one today. Ouch. I should do this one today. I'm going to invite you to just breathe in more of what you want to be feeling and experiencing, and to just sigh out any heaviness that you may feel, any sadness or lower energies, and just let those things go, and then refill that space with what you would want to be feeling. So go ahead and take that closed eyes or downward gaze. We're going to breathe in, holding that inhale, breathing out, and then holding that exhale. Then I'm going to invite you to just let's do 3 sets on your own. So breathing in. Maybe starting your last set. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes and just take notice of how you feel. Leah, what does that, will you share today what just even, that's probably what, 45 seconds, 60 seconds, what that does for you or what it did for you today?
I think it just helps me slow things down in my mind, because you get excited and then you start talking and then you get this idea and then that idea and then you just want to go blah, 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 and it all wants to come out all at once. And what I find is helpful in that is it just recenters. It just centers me into like my body. I feel my feet on the floor. Like I just notice more of my physical space, and it allows me to not be so much what's going on up here, but just like be present with my body in the moment.
Awesome. Thank you. It does similar for me. And we call that, I took some classes through the Heart Math Institute, and they talk a lot about heart coherence and bringing your heart into this beautiful sinus rhythm that is peaceful, and where you can just be in this space of where things function how they're designed to function. And again, just brings us into a present state where we can consciously create from, we can consciously make decisions, and we're just really aware of what's going on around us. So thank you to you out there for taking just a minute to breathe. And remember, this is something that you can do many times a day. In fact, I would highly encourage you to do it, or to practice it as taillight meditation. And when you're driving and you see a taillight come on, just think, oh,
time to breathe.
Just a big, deep breath. And let your mind slow down and let your heart come into coherence, and maybe lessen a lot of road rage that could happen out there. So with that, let's get into the crux of today, which I actually don't know what it is, because wait, we're live and unscripted. I said to Leah before we came on, what were we going to talk about today? And she walked away, and I could hear her say, it's live and unscripted, remember?
Let inspiration be your guide.
Like, how many times have you said that, Jen? But it doesn't matter how many times I've said that. I still find myself with some, just a little bit of nerves, because we're live and you're watching and we could make mistakes. And that's what I love. What?
Mistakes.
Mistakes?
Oh my gosh. Don't make a mistake, Jen. Don't do it.
Here's what I love about it, is that we get an opportunity to just laugh and to be like, yep, just said that, or that just happened. Like, as we're trying to breathe and I'm pulling out my pant leg and my hand slipped off my pants and my forearm smashed the edge of my desk. Yeah, that was awesome. And I got to do it in front of all of you. That was fantastic. Yeah. But here's the thing of why I feel like it's important to do what we're doing, because it's to normalize that mistakes happen. And if we're making mistakes, then we're actually living. And it doesn't mean anything about us. It means nothing about you if you're making mistakes, other than you're taking chances and you're living life more fully. And to that, I say huge kudos. Huge kudos. So Leah, how are we going to practice making mistakes today? What are we talk about?
Well, what I want to go like two different ways. One part of me is like, okay, do we go into the mistake conversation and about learning, or do I go back to what rebel means and how do we define it? And like, I don't know.
Let's go back to rebel and see where it takes us.
Okay.
Because you know what? For us, in defining rebel and building rebel, we have made what other people would consider a lot of mistakes. And right? And really, again, it's just that redefining. It's learning experiences, it's growth experiences, it's the stepping stones to all of the things that are waiting for us in the construction process. So let's go there.
Okay. So far, we have that rebel. One is one that knows the power of listening to their heart and has the courage to follow it, even if they must stand alone. Like even if it means that they must stand alone. And it doesn't necessarily mean forever, but there is definitely moments where what you're choosing to follow doesn't go with what everyone else's narrative is.
Absolutely.
So, I think of for myself, one of the bigger ones growing up was like seeing how my family was and having had different experiences outside the home and recognizing some things that I just didn't feel were right, or I felt like they could just be done differently, or I just looked at the world differently, and I could just ignore that, but not really. I don't think. Then I want to go into the whole conversation about.
I'm like, you're gonna get into choices. Let's maybe sidestep that one for today.
That one's funny.
It is funny, but it's intriguing at the same time.
But it's funny because like it reminds me of another conversation we were having around. So you hit this bump up at various points in your life that you see something and it changes how you perceive that thing, or it doesn't. You don't allow it. You don't move in that direction. So where I'm going with that is like, so I see how, let's give the example of my mom just had a baby. I was like 11 years old. At the time, Dr. Sears was really big, and he was all about not letting your babies cry and the psychological this and like I bought into all. I watched all those shows, but my parents grew up with you let your baby cry it out, and that's how they learn to self-soothe and all that stuff. So I was in this bump up of like I want to soothe my little baby brother. I want to be there for him. I want him to know he's loved, and all the reasons behind that. And that's what my heart was saying. And yet my parents had a different way of doing things, and just how it informed when I had my own kids and how I chose to raise them. I could have just said, oh, that's a bunch of hooey, or I'm not going to upset the apple cart because this is how my family does it. But those were really bump up moments for me growing up because I believed in what I was learning and I wanted to apply that. So I don't know, that's an example for me. What comes up for you when you think of moments in your life that you've been a rebel?
Jeez.
There's so many.
Gosh. I think I think those probably didn't happen until adulthood for me. I grew up, what I would call very, very halo wearing. I didn't like to rock the boat. I didn't like to be in trouble. I liked doing what I could to make my parents happy with my behavior and the things that I was learning and doing. And it probably wasn't until I went to college that I recognized the value in doing some things differently and taking some steps for myself and learning to understand what it was I felt as an individual human being, outside of living in my parents' home, or that was probably the biggest thing, is outside of living in my parents' home, because I had a lot of the other influences still there. So it probably wasn't until, oh my gosh, it was probably not until my 30s truly, that I started having these thoughts of, whoa, just like, it's like the record scratch moments where you're like, what, that, uh, and then I'd have to think about it and be like, what am I going to do? And so probably those first really big rebellious moments came for me when, um, I started to have some question in regards to my definition and interaction with the energy that I call God, and how I interact with that energy, and versus how I was taught, and um, knowing that I wanted to experience it differently, or that there was something inside of me that wanted to experience that differently, that felt like it was way bigger than maybe what my experience of it had been. And so going against the grain of everything that I was taught in regards um, to worth and value, and my relationship with God, and what happens after I die, and all these, I mean, really, they were beautiful things that I was taught through my religion growing up, and it just gave me this opportunity to do all the bump ups, and to maybe look at what the definitions were that were given me, that all the things we've been talking about, and to say, does that actually feel right for me? Does that work for me? And I live in a very, the religion is very predominant where I live, and almost everyone around me and in my circles practice it, and it's beautiful. But in those moments, those questions, I knew I had to question, and at some point I knew that I would have to do it differently, and that was super scary to feel like you were standing alone in a lot of moments, but to recognize that in order to get what my soul was calling for, I had to do that. And this thought just came to me of, it felt like the most valiant, faithful thing I could do was to actually sidestep the things that I have been taught, and explore some other options, and to see what actually worked better for me. That was probably one of my biggest ones. There were others at the same time, but let's just stick with that one for now.
Oh. And then when you're talking, I'm thinking of like, so where does mistakes fit into all of that? Like, if we're going out and going to redefine what faith can mean, or our relationship with energy, or how how we go about wanting to bring change to our family, like, where do mistakes come into that conversation? Like, do we feel emboldened to take the risk of making mistakes? Do we just feel such a confidence in what we believe that we're just gonna move forward and then figure it out as we go? Like, I just wonder sometimes how, because I tell my kids, it's okay to make mistakes, but what are you learning from them? If you're going to
Right?
continually make the same mistake, then
Insanity.
that's a well, it's a pattern at that point. If you're continually making the same mistake and not gaining learning from it, it's like when I'm doing art or anything, like, you can mess up in that process, but you're not losing. I guess the point I'm trying to make is you're not losing anything by making mistakes, because you're gaining knowledge of how you don't want to move forward in that.
Yeah. So as you're talking, I think it was Brene Brown. It's probably been 12 plus years ago. Um, she really came big onto the scene, and she was talking about this very thing, and I believe it was her, in her body of work, that I heard this thought of, um, guilt says I made a mistake, shame says I am the mistake. And I think that's I think that's the crux of it right there. And for those of you who know energy, or the work of power versus force, I'm totally blanking his name right now. Hold on. David Hawkins. I'm like, it's right here. Power versus force. We talked about this with Jane last week in our conversation. On a scale of energy, shame like resonates at 20, and which is right above death, and guilt is at 30. So they're really low on the energy scale when we're living in those spaces. So for me, when I learned that probably was the point, because I probably had the understanding that I was the mistake. Like it was actually reflected about who I was and who I was as a person and a being, and how I would show up in future things. And it informed a lot of my other decisions. When I came across that and that description, it like something just flipped for me. And I was like, wait a second. If I believe the things that I believe in regards to God and how he interacts with me, and what he feels in regards to me, he doesn't say I'm the mistake, because I was taught from a young kid. I can see this cute little poster of a little boy with his like this, and I would go to the drugstore down the street and they'd have all these free posters, and they had one of that cute little boy and it said, God don't make no junk. Right? God doesn't make mistakes. And so that would come into my mind, along with this that just struck emotion, along with this energy work, and this thought of like, shame says we are the mistake, and guilt says we just made one. And I started to recognize, like, on a really deep level, like, it's just something that we do. It just shows that, like I said earlier, that we're living, that we're taking steps for our growth and our action, and that it means not a damn thing about us. It doesn't even mean the good things. It's just something that we've experienced. And like you said earlier, are we taking note and being like, instead of being like, oh, we go, okay, what went good? What didn't go so good? And what could I do differently next time to get closer to the result that I want? Because you know what? The next time you might not hit it either. Mm-hmm. I mean, we could toss in the Edison quotes, but everyone knows that one, so we're not going to. But I love what you're saying there. Is it took me a long time into my world to realize that it means nothing about us other than we're living. And I'd rather be living. Do I still get nervous? Absolutely. Do I still feel like there could be judgment from other people? Absolutely. I'm human. I wear skin. But I've learned to, or am learning to, let that go and recognize that I'm far more important than what anyone else thinks about me.
I love the quote. I don't know who said it, but like, what other people think isn't any of your business. And it's so much easier to say than it is to actually live. And you need those reminders of that's, and whatever other people think of you is also important to remember, is that it's more a reflection of what's going on in their mind and body and their experience. And you know, it's what we were talking about today in the Nepo book about projecting and personalizing, and you know, how we put some of that on other people, and we don't recognize that it's really going on within ourselves. So
yeah, I know you specifically went and got the book to have those words today. Is there a piece in there that, I know there is, I don't even know I'm asking the question. Would you like to share the piece that stood out for you?
Well, first of all, there's the quote at the beginning saying, wanting to reform the world without discovering one's true self is like trying to cover the world with leather to avoid the pain of walking on stones and thorns. It's much simpler to wear shoes. I just love that, because it's just, why are we trying to band-aid the whole world when we can just look at how can we impact the situation? How can we look at this differently? How can I change? It's that whole idea of I have to change myself. And I love, so many different thoughts going on at once, because I'm noticing the trend on socials. It's, you know, about love and relationship, there's a shift happening from I'm devoting my whole self to you, and I'm giving myself to, like, the sacrifice and all that stuff. But it's shifting to more of the way I can serve you best is by serving myself first, growing, and
Right.
we can do that. And the best thing you can do for me is to grow yourself too. And then we can grow together. Like, it just gives me goosebumps. I love
Yeah.
seeing more of that trend versus like all the love songs that you hear. I think it was on a Kyle show that if you really listen to love songs and you break it down, it's like, oh, that I don't know, like,
Right.
I
It's
can't see
cringy.
anything without you. It's like, whoa, wait, that's a little too clingy for me, and
Yeah.
I love how there's shifting happening around, what a healthy relationship is, and what's how can we evolve together versus, one's growing, one's maybe not growing, and what how that can affect relationships.
Yeah. So that makes me think of two thoughts. So one is Leah, remember Shel Silverstein?
Shel Silverstein?
Yeah,
Okay.
because that's the second thing I'm going to talk about. Will you please remember that for me?
Shel Silverstein.
The first thing is when you're talking about it's easier to wear shoes. It takes me back to Michael Singer and in his writing in The Untethered Soul about how when we get a wound, we do this really amazing thing and we just cover it up. So when we've made a mistake, we try to cover it up. And then it still hurts. And so then we put something else on it. And it still hurts because we bump into things and we're living life and we're active. And so we put something big on it. And then we have something bigger on it. And then we have to like adjust our hallways because it's so big. And then we have to have something to help carry it because it's so big. When in reality, if we would just address the wound and recognize what it is and take the thorn out and clean it out and then let it heal, like we wouldn't have to go through all of the shizzle of keeping everything covered up and hiding and thinking that it means anything about us. I fell, a rock cut my arm. I got to clean the dirt out and it's painful. It's not comfortable to do that. But it heals so much quicker. We don't have to have all the infection and the heat and the shiz that comes with it. So I love that. I love how that was presented in the Nepo book today. And just, again, the reminder to our listener, like, it's always better to just recognize, like, it's just a thing. It's just something that's occurred or taken place and it means nothing about you. And to take the time to notice and recognize and clean it out. But then it took, as you were talking, it took me to Shel Silverstein about the growing. And he, many years ago, I don't even know, I've probably had the books for at least 10 years. I don't know when he wrote them. Shel is also the author of Where the Sidewalk Ends and those kinds of poem books. But he wrote these two books. One is called The Missing Piece, and the other is called The Missing Piece Meets the Big O. And I would highly recommend them. They're very simple in their words and very simple in their art, and yet at the same time are exquisite in getting this beautiful point across of learning to grow separately but together at the same time. So I just appreciate you sharing your comments that way and bringing that up. And we can also then say, read The Untethered Soul. It's beautiful. And get the Shel books. Shel Silverstein.
Yes. So the other part of today's reading, it's like, so this Nepo book is like their daily reflections, and they're just beautiful stories and just amazing little reminders. So the other part of it is about taking ownership. And if you want to save the world, then when you spill the soup, simply say, I'm sorry, I spilled the soup. And how powerful it is to just take that ownership of what, what's happened or what you've done. Or, I know because of some of my upbringing and just and having the awareness of wanting to do things different, yet still recognizing because of how I grew up, that I'm going to mess up. I'm going to go back into some of those old patterns in moments where I'm not being as aware. And something I've always done with my kids is when I have moments that I've slipped into those patterns, I just apologize. And I say, I had a really rough moment today, and this is not how I want to show up. And just acknowledging that, that probably felt really scary for you, or, it was scary for me, and I'm still learning, and just showing that I'm human, and that I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm making steps to do better, and show up in ways that feel better for not only for myself, but for my kids too. So.
Well, and what a really beautiful model for them to see. Like my mom's human too, and I know she just screwed up. And instead of her being like, I'm the adult, I'm the authority, she's like, I screwed up, and I'm coming to ask for your forgiveness, and to have conversation, and to maybe spread a healing salve if needed, and to allow your kid to express how they felt, and to have that it's such beautiful modeling, and I just think it's gorgeous.
It's cool to see it now that my she's almost 20, and how she talks back to me, not like talks back, but like how she speaks some of those words and those messages to me when she's having her own moments like that, and how she talks herself through it, because we've had those conversations, and it's just so neat to see how she communicates. It doesn't mean it's always perfect and it's always peaceful, but it's
Right?
definitely, you can process and work through it, and you don't have time to build stories of, faults in the relationship. You can because that conversation is coming, that you can have the space to have that conversation, maybe not right away, but it will be there. And so for me anyways, it gives me some peace of mind to say, that was maybe a rough moment, and to give grace there, instead of taking it personally and feeling attacked, or whatever that can be.
Yeah, I love it. So I was telling you about, like, how you were talking to your kids. I was sharing an experience that I had yesterday on Tuesday Adventure, where I was with Jamie, the mom, and we had a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old, and we had an 8-year-old with us. And as those boys had an opportunity to switch off carrying a somewhat heavy backpack that had, I didn't know what the contents were. It wasn't rocks, but it was Gatorade, and other, like, it was carrying 2 bottles of, like, canisters of water, and it had other stuff in it. And I mean, it was fairly heavy. And so they were taking turns carrying it up, and there were plenty of hills to be climbing, and they're short, steep hills. And we had an 8-year-old with us who was doing such a beautiful job. And it was his turn to carry the backpack just as we were getting ready to ascend, like, the last of the steep hill. And I was thinking in my mind, like, oh, crappy time to be switching that backpack. And, I wanted to go to, like, easing his pain, and maybe taking away the experience of him carrying the backpack, the suffering. And I thought, no, this is a beautiful opportunity to just let him carry it for what he can. So put the backpack on him. The big boys take off. We get the 8-year-old all situated, and he just continues walking, holding his mom's hand. And a little while later, I hear her say, how are you doing? Like, is it time to give that backpack back to the bigger boys? And he's like, no, I'm okay. And I listen to that. And then just seconds later, I hear this cute mom who struggles with her momhood and how she interacts, and gets caught up in all that. Am I doing it right? Am I giving my kid good experiences? And I hear her say to him, this will bring tenderness. It was a tender moment. And she said, your worth doesn't depend on how long you carry that backpack. And your worth doesn't depend or have any change if you need someone else to carry that for you because you're tired and you need to rest. And I listened to the tenderness with which she spoke the words, but the power in the words themselves to give him power to say, to check in with himself and say, how am I really doing? He was tired. And to give him an opportunity to make a decision for himself whether or not to keep carrying the backpack a little longer or to say, yeah, I really am tired. I've got to give this off. And that cute little dude like carried that backpack for probably, I would say, at least another quarter mile. And then you could tell, and he said, I need some help now. And to hear the power in his voice when he said, I need some help, and to be able to say, that was really courageous for you to say that and to take the backpack from him and just move forward so that he could, I love those opportunities. And that you modeled that, and I watched that mom model that yesterday is just, it's such a beautiful thing to teach our kids young those things.
Well, I just think of how many of us do attach our worth to how long we can carry that backpack, and not only how long can we carry it, but how much farther and beyond the points of feeling broken down, like we feel like we can't. But if we put it down or if we ask for help, it's somehow we feel defeated and like we're not enough, and that we're not gonna, if we can't even do this and carry this simple backpack, then who am I to do anything else? And we attach all these stories, and just I think of, I know I was like that for a long time, especially in my early momhood days, like, because one, I was a young mom. Two, I was trying to prove myself that to everyone else, like, just because I'm a young mom doesn't mean I can't do it. But to such an extreme point that I thought, I had my daughter and I was nursing her, and I remember being in so much just pain nursing her, but refusing to ask for help because I thought it was just normal nursing pain. And I thought, like, I just need to toughen up. Like, this is momhood. I'm going to be the best mom I can be. And I'm going to nurse her. And it got so bad to one point that I developed fever, and it was just, there was so much tenderness. It turned out I had mastitis, and I just got really sick, and it was so painful. And I remember my doctor saying, like, why didn't you come sooner? And at that time, I didn't have the words for it, but looking back, I recognized I was so stubborn. I wouldn't even tell my mom because I knew, like, I didn't want her, I wanted everyone to know I could handle it. And no matter what, I was going to handle it. And, but that's just one example. I did that so many times, and you take yourself to burnout, and to the point, like, you can't ask, because why can't you ask? Because you're somehow weak, you're not enough, you're all the things. And to hear you say it has nothing to do with your value is like, what do you mean? That's what I've been taught. That's all right. I know. And just, that whole idea around loving yourself, like that was that's been like a recent concept for me, like in the last 5-6 years, maybe, because it was in such a shitstorm of self-hatred and not enough and all the things. And what was the quote, Jen, we read the other day? You can't hate yourself enough to improve yourself, or something like that. Like, it comes out of a place of love, and it comes out of a place of wanting to do things differently. Like, I remember that thought so vividly, of being in such a low place of, like, I hate this and I hate that, and I'm not enough. And then part of me is like, okay, so we've done this for a while now. What if we tried the opposite? Just, you can always go back if it doesn't work for you. And then just how much everything shifted when I went that route versus self-destruction route.
Well, it's you're talking. I hear you saying, you get to that point where we change because we see the value in it, or we change because it just hurts bad enough. And I hear you saying like you got to the points where it just hurt bad enough.
Yeah.
And how many of us have done that? I mean, really, all of us. Um, so as you're talking, I'm like, okay, so when we get to does that lead us into like what surrender is? Like earlier, like a couple months ago, we got on a conversation. We were in a conversation with Jane, who we interviewed on Live and Unscripted yesterday, and we were talking with her in regards to our women's river adventure retreat that's coming up in August that you want to know about. We're going to put in the comments the link for the webinar that we're having on Friday, where you can ask questions and get your concerns answered and all of that. You can also register because it's time to get you registered and get on the boat. But we're talking with Jane, and Jane's really perceptive, and she said to me, I can see that you're going through some things, and Jen looks like she's going through more, and it's like written on a billboard. I was like, what? Like it's that noticeable?
I thought that was funny.
And like I can't remember if it was that afternoon or the next day, she says to me, she just types me one big word in capital letters, and she said, surrender. And I was like, what the hell does that even mean, surrender? Like I've heard this word a lot of times. I studied it many years ago. I thought I knew how to do it, and then I'm like, I guess it's time to take a look at it, because she said it, and then it came to me from another direction, then it came to me from another source, and then it just kept coming into my presence, and I thought, oh, are you gonna be awake, Jen? Are you gonna be aware and pay attention to this? And because I am being given the opportunity to really learn surrender on new levels. And so as you're talking, Leah, I'm thinking, is this the point that you're talking at where we get to that point where like we know change has to happen? And is that the point where we're like, okay, we're just going to really try and figure out what surrender is, the letting go, and what is that?
Yeah. Letting go of the way we thought it should look is what comes to mind. Like when I think of that example of just being in a space of self-hatred, like that's just all I knew. And that's how I had functioned up until that point. Like I didn't know another way until, that thought came like from such a pain point, like this isn't working. This is just hurting. And you feel like crap all the time. Like, why don't we try this way? And, why are we so stubborn sometimes to make that shift? Why are we so stubborn to make change? Because we don't know it, unfamiliar, it can be uncomfortable.
And even if something isn't working for us, or we're unaware that it's not working, we just know the feelings that we have, we tend to hang on to it. Like I would say, my little darlings, because we know it. Even if it's crappy, we know it. And I think of all the times I've done that in my world, or maybe even I was taught to do that in my world, to stay within the bounds of what was right or wrong, and instead of really being encouraged to have an understanding of my own personal knowing and what my voice sounds like. And I think, going back to our earlier conversation of where rebel started to play a role for me, that's what it was about, was learning to hear what my own voice sounded like, and not my physical voice, what the voice of my heart sounds like, what the voice of my soul and spirit sounds like. And I just had a memory come in. I was like, I'm going to share it just because it popped in. It's something that happened probably like 13 or so years ago. And I lived close to where I live now. And I had a big window where I could see out on town, down into the town. And I was in a moment of like big decision and having to let go of relationships and and it wasn't even just a shifting of them, it was an actual letting go of them. And I didn't know how to do it. And I didn't know if I wanted to do it. And um I just remember thinking, why am I still going through this? I thought I've learned this lesson and I thought I've all these things. And like clear as day, like I'm talking to you, I heard my like I actually, this sounds so funny to say out loud, but I actually fell backwards onto my, like, so I was seated on my bed at how this experience happened. And it was me hearing my own soul talk to me that said, I know when it's time for you to be done and it's not time for you to be done. The lesson isn't learned yet. I was like, what just happened? And that's one of those pivotal moments where you can't deny that it happened, because it was so in my face. And so like I say, as I'm talking to you, I heard myself, like the me that is me, not this stuff, but the me that is me speaking to me. And that's something that's really stood with me as I have moved forward through going against the grain, paddling up the river without a paddle, all the things that everyone's like, you shouldn't know, wrong, whatever, our families or our religions or our society, people around us tell us, but inside you're like, but there's this thing inside that's telling me this. And that experience has informed so many of my decisions since then. And being in the current one, like I can't, it's super fascinating to just see how that has played out as far as it comes to surrender and letting go and being in the space of, is this something that I want? Or is this something that, growing up, I was taught, give your heart to God, which is such a beautiful thing. But I didn't know what that meant or what that looked like. I can't say that I still do. I'm learning. I'm always learning. But in the current moments, I know that I want to be connected to that energy, to that creative power that I know is a part of me. But when I let go of what I want, like I can have a dream and a vision, but there's something out there. I call it God. We can call it life, universe, whatever worked for you, that has such a bigger version of us. And so for me, that surrender has been just, I call it open hand living. Like my hands in front of me, it already knows all of my things. And for me to try and hide it is ridiculous, but to just live open handed and say, I'm going to do my best today to feel what this connection is and to let it guide and inform my decisions and my actions in this day. Inspire, I guess we could say inspire. And it's been really odd and really awesome to experience the peace and calm that has come. It's unnerving, actually. And there's a part of me, like my mind, that still wants to see these great and miraculous things, but to trust like that the changes that are going on inside of me are the great and miraculous things, and that eventually that will show up outside.
I feel, sorry, when you're saying that, I feel like it's the missing of the accumulation. It's the compound effect. It's all those tiny little shifts and movements and ways that we think, they're all building up to a miraculous that you can't see until you look back at where you were. So I just love that you shared that.
It also reminds me of that, in the book, The Shack, they talk about fractal. And when we're in the middle of the mess, it just seems like this big mess of all these different experiences and situations. But when we get to be far enough away from it and we get to look, like you say, look back or look down on, we're like, oh my gosh, look what was being created. And it actually has form, and it's measured, and it was not that it was calculated, but it had purpose, and it had design, and it was created in this beautiful fashion, even though when we're in it, it's like, it's what it feels like sometimes. I'm learning to, I don't know if I don't know if I want to go as far to say I'm learning to really enjoy surrender. I'm learning to, maybe it's just learning to embrace it, and willing to see the miraculous that can come from it, and that when I just add my ability to the greater power, it feels scary sometimes. And at the same time, it feels really great to just go, I can let that go, and allow myself to feel like, I don't know, it can be so many different things. Maybe it's a lightness, maybe it's a greater love, maybe it's a
Calm.
the calm. I was going to say peace, the calm. I don't want to give name to it, because you as a listener, or you as Leah, may have a different experience of what that is for you. But just watching, like, who comes into the picture, what experiences do they bring, that add value to your own lived experience, or how do you pop into someone else's life at just the right moment with all of your magic and your message, and how do you bring value to what they're doing that maybe you might not have even known about. It's just super, it's mind-blowing, is what I'm going to say right now. It's just mind-blowing what I'm getting to learn and experience in regards to mistakes and surrender and all the things that we're talking about.
Well, I think it really just challenges everything that we know. And
Absolutely.
Yet it comes more from a feeling instinctual place. And but once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. Because, in my own surrender experiment, when I know I've made a decision, or I feel that decision has been made for me, but I'm not sure that I can follow through with it, even though it feels like the right thing, and I go back to what I was doing, just how jarring and how heavy, going back to the other thing, felt in my body, in my core. But when I shifted, even though it had moments of being challenging and just painful, it felt heavier to go that route than to follow what I feel I was being guided towards. And then I think of how we're taught so much to not trust what we feel, and how much we're taught to trust what everyone else's story around us should be. And I feel like I had this thought the other day of, I want to lean into surrender, but then I'm like, wait a minute, lean in implies I'm going against, because I work in pictures, I imagine like you're leaning into the wind and the wind is pushing on you. I'm like, no, surrender would be allowing the wind to help me, to guide me, to go with the wind versus against it. Or I think of like, you're in a river and I could hold on to what I know this rock, but surrender would be letting go of the rock and letting yourself go down the river and see where that guides you. And I know it's just interesting, and it just has different meanings for all of us at different places, and just to have the awareness to pay attention to some of that stuff and be open to seeing what doing things a different way can look like and feel like.
Right. Well, and as you're talking about the river and water. Of course, the river trip's coming into my mind, and it brings back a conversation that you and I had I don't know if it was yesterday in work session or the day before, where we were talking about, as part of Righteous Rebels, what my intention is. We're not here to teach you anything. We're not here to we're here to just give you ideas and thoughts of maybe some different ways that life could function for you and bring you back home to yourself. And I was thinking about the river trip or the other experiences that we are creating for you. I mean, we're creating them for us too, because it brings us joy. It brings a happiness and a lightness to our lives to be able to bring them to you, because we know the value of those experiences and how they shift our lived experience, and they bring more confidence and they bring us strength that you may not even know that you have. But I'm going to say you probably know you have it. You just don't want to trust that you have it. And by having these experiences, you don't leave the same person as you did when you showed up to them. It's almost impossible to do so. And I was thinking about, we were having this discussion of, we're in our discussions with other people, they keep telling us, you got to tell people what they're getting from this trip. What are they going to get from this trip? And we're so conditioned to be on guard of, I'm going to give you my time and my money. What am I going to get? What am I getting from this? Instead of, I'm investing my time and my money in myself, and here's what I'm going to give to this experience. And so that shift in itself, when I personally look at an experience of, the best examples I have of these are when I'm running. What am I going to get from this? Am I going to get a t-shirt? Am I going to get a medal? Am I going to get, a PR? Am I going to get, what kind of snacks and things am I going to get at the aid stations? Or is it, what am I going to give to this experience for myself? What questions am I going to ask myself? How am I going to celebrate? How am I going to assist someone who I meet on the trail who might be in a struggle place? Like, what can I give to the experience? And the whole experience changes when I think that way, versus at the end, if I haven't gotten what I was told or think I'm going to get, it's like a mute point, because I have put myself into the experience, and then what I get is even more precious and more tender and more valuable, because I gave to the experience. And so this is me inviting you to maybe start making that switch in your own mind of, it's okay to invest in yourself, and it's okay, time and money and thought, and to ask yourself, what can I give to this experience that's going to make it better for me, but also is going to possibly raise the level of the experience of everyone else who's involved. So that's my thought there, as you're talking about the river and experiences and the letting go. What can I let go of to make this a better experience for me, so that maybe the people who've created it for me, I actually can tap into that energy, or the higher power that's created it for me, I can feel and experience that on a much deeper level that actually does shift and inform the rest of my lived experience. That was a really big side note, but it came really strongly to me as you were talking. So thanks for letting me share.
I love that. And when you're saying that, I think of expectation, right? You're setting yourself up.
Premeditated resentments.
Mm-hmm. So I love that. What can I bring to the table? What's my intention?
Yeah.
It's being the active creator of your experience, of your life. So I feel like we need to wrap it up, Jen, because we have a Zoom call with Miss Kate soon.
Right? Who happens to be one of our amazing river guides for our trip in August. Leah, will you put the link to how to be a part of that call on Friday in the notes? Thank you.
Already there.
And then if you are in the surrounding area of Idaho Falls, Leah and I are going to host a summer solstice party. We're calling it Fire by the River. It's going to be super fun. Bring your tinfoil dinner and your own non-alcoholic drink, and your intention of what you're going to bring to the event, and let's celebrate the longest night of the year together. we love you. I love you. And I'm super appreciative for what you bring to these live and unscripted conversations, and for, I call it leaning into the energy, allowing yourself to feel and to be a part of, getting yourself in the flow of what's going on really, really assists us as well. So thank you so much. Leah, last thoughts from you.
From me, I am super excited to hear and see that some of you participated in the impromptu dragonfly the other day. That was me on a bit of a struggle bus and doing the thing that I know how to do when I'm on a struggle bus. And it was just beautiful to have the opportunity to share with all of you that did it as well. And a thank you to you, Jen, for saying, yeah, I'll do that too. and I just love seeing that. So, and thank you for sharing your photos in the art gallery or on the page. And if you're having trouble finding the art gallery, if you go to the Righteous Rebel page, you won't find it unless you're on the group page itself. If you're just scrolling and you see a post, it's not there. You have to go to Righteous Rebels, and then along the top, it's on the featured, it'll be art gallery. But I'll be better about making sure it's refreshed once a week. And so we can see your art, whatever art means to you and whatever it is you're creating. We'd love to see you share there.
That's awesome. And remember, you're always creating, whether you know it or not. And part of what we do is to help you do it consciously and in awareness and from your heart. I did have someone say to me, you didn't show us your dragonfly yesterday. So I did I did pin it to the art this morning, but here's my dragonfly.
There it is. Love it.
Yeah, it was a challenge to not want to judge it, but you know what? I did it. I showed up, and that's all that matters. Thank you for being with us today, and just going with the flow of where inspiration and conversation took us. We hope you found value in it, and we would love to hear about it in the comments. What did you find valuable? How are you using these similar things or things like them in your own lived experience right now? Or if you've got wisdom to share with us, put it in the comments. We would love to hear it. And what other things would you like to be learning about or know about or have us talk about in Live and Unscripted, or just in the Righteous Rebels in general? Let's see, I already mentioned, you can also go to, Leah, will you put this in there as well? Okay. Where to get the books, the journal?
Yep.
To get our journal, Leah has also authored Living with Dirty Glasses, as well as Remember When. We're going to start talking more about this one, but the journal, definitely go get your hands on this. And FYI, for those of you who are on the river trip, this will be in your swag bag. It's awesome. We love it. We're super proud of it. We're super proud of you. Not that you need us to be, but we are. We're in your corner. We got you. And remember, be bold.
Be brave.
Be a rebel.
Be a rebel.
We'll see you soon.